Today we're going to be reading The Tales of Peter Rabbit by Beatrix Potter, adapted by Cindy McKay, and narrated by Mrs. Baxter. Once upon a time, there were 4 little rabbits, and their names were Flopsy, Mopsy, Cottontail, and Peter. They lived with their mother in a sandbank underneath the root of a very big fir tree. One day Mother told them to go out and play. She told them to have fun. She told them to be good. Now, Flopsy, Mopsy, Cottontail, and Peter, said old Mrs. Rabbit, you may go down the lane to gather berries, but don't go into Mr. McGregor's garden. Your father had an accident there. He was put into a pie by Mrs. McGregor. Flopsy went to pick berries. Mopsy went to pick berries. Cottontail went to pick berries too, but not Peter. Peter, who was very naughty, ran straight away to Mr. McGregor's garden. He ate some carrots and French beans, and then, feeling rather sick, he went to look for parsley. But around the end of the cucumber frame, whom should he meet but Mr. McGregor? Mr. McGregor saw Peter. He was very mad. Peter saw Mr. McGregor. He was very scared. Mr. McGregor jumped up and ran after Peter, waving a rake, calling out, "Stop, thief!" Peter rushed all over the garden, for he had forgotten the way back to the gate. Peter ran and ran. He ran very fast. He ran so fast he lost his shoes. A bird found one, but it did not fit her. Peter might have gotten away if he had not run into a net and got caught by the large buttons on his jacket. Mr. McGregor came up with a sieve to pop on top of Peter, but Peter wriggled out just in time, leaving his jacket behind. Peter had to hide. He jumped into a can. It was a good place to hide, but it was full of water. Mr. McGregor was sure that Peter was in the tool shed, perhaps underneath a flower pot. He began to turn them over carefully, looking under each. Presently, Peter sneezed. "Ka-choo!" Mr. McGregor was after him in no time, and tried to put his foot upon Peter, who had jumped out of the window. It was a very small window. It was too small for Mr. McGregor, so Mr. McGregor gave up. Peter sat down to rest. He was out of breath and trembling with fright, and he had not the least idea which way to go. Also, he was very damp with sitting in that can. After a time, he began to wander about, going lippity, lippity, not very fast, and looking all around. Peter began to cry. He wanted to go home, but he didn't know how to get there. He tried to find his way straight across the garden, but he became more puzzled. Presently he came to a pond where White Cat was staring at some goldfish. Peter thought it best to go away without speaking to her. He had heard about cats from his little cousin, Little Benjamin Bunny. Peter went back towards the tool shed and climbed upon a wheelbarrow and peeped over. Peter saw Mr. McGregor. Behind Mr. McGregor was a gate. Behind the gate was a way home. Peter started running as fast as he could go. Mr. McGregor caught sight of him in the corner, but Peter did not care. He slipped underneath the gate and was safe at last in the wood outside of the garden. Mr. McGregor hung Peter's little jacket and shoes for a scarecrow to frighten the blackboard birds. Peter ran and ran. He ran all the way home. He lay down on the soft sand in his home, and Peter went to sleep. I'm sorry to say, Peter was not very well during the evening. His mother put him to bed and made some chamomile tea, and she gave him a dose of it. But Peter, Mopsy, and Cottontail had bread and milk and blackberries for supper. This is the end. Thank you for listening to The Tales of Peter Rabbit. This story was compiled by Mrs. Baxter for the Computer Multimedia and Animation Technology Prep, or Tech Prep, 5th period, November 2008, Conroe High School. You do have to follow all the copyright laws when you're making projects such as this. Copyright laws state that you may use 10% of an original work, or you may use it one time for educational use only. This narration is intended to encourage children to read more in Conroe ISD. It is not for any economic gain. It is purely educational. This textbook is owned all rights, copyrights by Frederick Wayne and Company. They own all trademarks, character names, and illustrations of Beatrix Potter. The text itself is copyrighted in 1997 by Treasure Bay Incorporated.